What's going on, guys? Farzin Masugian here with you on a Monday night. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope your week is off to a great start. We're starting off here with the Chiefs Zone podcast. Appreciate all of you guys joining me on this Monday night, whether it's live on Facebook or on YouTube, or for those of you who are listening later after the fact, the archive version. Definitely appreciate all of you guys. Appreciate everyone tuning into the Chiefs Zone podcast. Massive numbers over the weekend. Thank you guys so much for that. Two big live streams, the post-game show, and then last night's game where the AFC Championship game was set and announced, and we had a lot of people tune into that one. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate all of you guys. Let's look ahead now as it is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills once again in the AFC Championship game. It's the fourth time we're going to see Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen in the AFC Championship game. Second time in the AFC Championship game. Fourth time in the postseason. And that is very significant, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But before we do all of that, I want to let you know this podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. And maybe you want to catch the AFC Championship game this year. Maybe you want to go to the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks, hopefully to check out the Chiefs play either the Commanders or the Eagles. Or maybe you want to get your Royals baseball tickets. We still got college basketball action going on. KU, MU, K-State. A lot of options for you at SeatGeek. And if you're a new customer, you can use my promo code Farzine and save $20 off your first purchase. So go to SeatGeek.com, pick your tickets, and at checkout, put in my promo code Farzine to save $20 off your first order. All right. Let's get into it here. I mentioned earlier that Allen and Mahomes, they're meeting for the fourth time in the playoffs. And I haven't seen a lot of people discuss this much, but it is out there. This is the second most meetings between two quarterbacks head to head in a postseason. Number one is Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. They've met each other 5 times. So Allen and Mahomes, who are both in their 20s, they've already played each other. Well, they're about to play each other for a fourth time. Manning and Brady, I mean, what a rivalry that was in the 2000s and the 2010s. And those two met 5 times. So it's kind of crazy that Allen and Mahomes, they just keep finding a way to, it just seemed like it's always been destined for those guys. Destined to meet, that is. And the crazy part is we've seen some rematches. I mean, the Chiefs have played the Texans a couple of times, though different quarterbacks in the postseason. I'm trying to think of other rematches. I mean, the big obvious one is Joe Burrow versus Mahomes, where in the playoffs it was 1 apiece. But when it comes to Allen versus Mahomes, they've done it 4 times, or about to do it 4 times, or for a 4th time. But it's always been Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, what about when Allen had the most insane game ever, throwing 4 touchdown passes to Gabe Davis, and the coaches screwed up the last 13 seconds? Oh, well, they didn't win at the end of the day. That's unfortunate. I mean, Josh Allen deserved to be on the winning side that day, but that's just not how it worked. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's been in that situation many times where he's had great games, but Chiefs didn't come out on the winning end. I mean, those things happen, unfortunately. And then, you know, what about last year? I love people when Bills fans talk about last year's playoff game and how the Chiefs won because Tyler Bass missed. Yes, because that's the only thing that ever happened in that entire 60-minute football game is Tyler Bass missing. Not the fact that Josh Allen missed a wide open Khalil Shakir in the end zone 2 plays before. Not the fact that McCole Hardman, who, you know, fumbled going into the end zone, and that gave Buffalo new hope, because otherwise that would have been a 2-possession game. A lot of people forget about that sometimes. It's always funny to me. But at the end of the day, this is a Chiefs team that's always found a way to come through in the end. So I trust that the Chiefs will do it again. I really do. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, especially, but this is funny how, it's funny how narratives work, selective memory. It's all funny to me. They'll always say, well, we beat the Chiefs again, we can do it again. I mean, Didn't Buffalo just beat a team that they got shellacked by in the regular season? I said it earlier this week, every game is a different game. Every game is different. So at the end of the day, when you just look at the Chiefs and Bills, what they have to bring to the table, this is a Chiefs team that got the number 1 seed. Yes, they lost to Buffalo. And I know Buffalo, their postseason, their record against postseason teams not the best, but they're here in the AFC Championship game. So props to them on doing that. And I know a lot of people will say, well, Baltimore shot themselves in the foot many times. Yeah, perhaps they did, but you can't ever apologize for that. You can only you have to capitalize on your opponent's mistakes. That's what the Chiefs have done so many times. That's what a lot of teams do. That's how a lot of teams win their games. And I know it only gets exacerbated when Kansas City wins the way they win. But that's just the way people want to react, I guess. Again, selective memory, selective narratives. That's kind of how it all works out here. Andy Reid spoke to the media today, and there was a really good question that was asked to Andy Reid about what his biggest takeaway was from the first meeting between the Chiefs and Bills this season back in week 11, and what is something that the Chiefs can improve upon. And he did not hesitate one bit and immediately mentioned the third down efficiency where Kansas City struggled, even mentioning that, the defense has got to get off the field on third down. And I look back at that game because I didn't really recall the third down problems in that one. But when you look at the stats, Kansas City allowed 9 of 15 third down conversions. Buffalo just had a very easy time, and Kansas City has kind of struggled on third down lately, both on the offensive side, which they're usually very good at, and also on the defensive side, allowing some conversions, leaving guys wide open there. So Buffalo was 9 of 15. Now, I do want to go back to that game and talk about the defense, because I think the defense gets a little too much heat for the way they played in that game. Because I know Trent McDuffie didn't play well in that one. Probably one of the more forgettable games when it comes to Trent McDuffie, because he's had nothing but great games for Kansas City, with the exception of a few here and there. And I thought that was one where McDuffie, a rare moment where he just had a bad game. But I'm looking at the score from that game. It was 30-21 Buffalo. And if you look at the halftime score, it was 16-14. Now, keep in mind, Buffalo missed a PAT on the first touchdown of the game. So it was 16-14 at halftime. It was the exact same score going into the fourth quarter. Buffalo got the ball to open up the second half. And what does Kansas City do? Kansas City forces a 3-and-out. But unfortunately, the Chiefs' offense went 3-and-out right afterwards. Buffalo gets the ball back. They have a 6-play drive. Chiefs forced a punt once again. Chiefs get the ball back. The Chiefs were mimicking the Bills' offense in the third quarter. The Chiefs also had a 6-play drive. So it kind of just turned into, okay, who's going to take advantage of the opposing team's defense? Because both defenses were getting stops. And it just kind of came down to who's going to take advantage, because both defenses were getting tired at that point. Unfortunately, it was Kansas City's defense where Buffalo went on 2 very long drives. One of them started in the third quarter and went into the fourth quarter, had a 10-play drive, just a little over 6 minutes, 83 yards, and they got a touchdown there. So at that point, it was a 9-point game. Kansas City cut the deficit and put it back to a 2-point game, but Buffalo went on that crazy 12-play, 70-yard drive, and that was the one where Josh Allen had that 26-yard run there on 4th and 2, where, just embarrassed that Chiefs defense there. And that's not something where you see the Chiefs defense. They don't ever look like that often. So it's one of those situations. And I said this yesterday, and you guys know I'll come out with my reel later in the week where I talk about the 3 keys for the Chiefs to win. I'll just tell you right now, number 1 is to contain Josh Allen. And we've gone over the numbers before already with Josh Allen. The first time the Chiefs and Bills played, Allen, I think, ran for 55 yards off 12 scrambles. So not bad. In general, Buffalo didn't run very well. They had a total of 31 rushes, averaging almost 3.5 yards per carry. They held James Cook to 2.2 yards per carry. He got 2 rushing touchdowns. Those are both in the red zone. James Cook's longest run for Buffalo in that game was 6 yards. Ty Johnson had an 8-yard run at one point. Ray Davis had a 6-yard run at one point. But the Chiefs, they did everything right with their run defense, except for that 26-yard run by Josh Allen there, where he got the touchdown and iced the game right there. So containing Josh Allen is absolutely pertinent in this game. And this is kind of what worries me, because with the Chiefs, they have struggled containing and defending against running quarterbacks. We've seen some quarterbacks take advantage of those open holds. And I think, listen, Kansas City does a good job in coverage. Sometimes these are by design, but there are times where quarterbacks are actually trying to look for a receiver down the field against Kansas City's defense, and they can't find anyone. But because Kansas City's got everything covered up, they just kind of lose track of it, of the quarterback, and allow him to have all that space to run free there. I remember in last year's AFC Championship game, I was a little worried about that one and how Kansas City was going to handle Lamar Jackson and the Ravens rushing attack. Well, they shut down, I think it was Gus Edwards last year who was their starting running back. And then as far as Lamar Jackson went, the Chiefs had a lot of the Chiefs play great in the secondary, especially with that man coverage there. And they just shut down. There were a lot of one-on-one situations where the Chiefs just had everyone covered. Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, and Lamar, when he saw all those guys covered, he was trying to make a run for it, but Kansas City's defense all over it, not letting him try to break free and go through and do anything. And I'm not trying to compare Lamar Jackson to Josh Allen, but if you can contain a guy like Lamar Jackson, like the Chiefs did in last year's AFC Championship game, surely you can do it to Josh Allen in this game here. Now, the Chiefs, like I said, they struggle against running quarterbacks. The only 100-yard rusher against Kansas City was Lamar Jackson, and he ran for 111 yards. Now, I don't think Josh Allen's going to go for 111 yards unless he scrambles 24 times, which would be an insane approach, whether by design or not. But I think, I'd be shocked if it even goes to that point. I just feel like that's a hypothetical scenario because, listen, if I'm sitting here telling you guys all of this, surely Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo know this as well. They know that this is going to be a Bills offense that's going to be ready for anything and everything. So obviously they've got a great supporting cast on offense, though the All-Pro and the Pro Bowl votes don't seem to agree with that. But Josh Allen will find those open guys like Shakir, the tight ends who have done well against the Chiefs in the past, throwing it to James Cook sometimes, Coleman as well. Allen will certainly take advantage of those things, and Kansas City's got to be ready for that. Kansas City absolutely needs to be ready for that. That is very important in this football game. So what do? How does Kansas City go about it? And I see a lot of you guys are talking about QB spies and all that. Yeah. Who specifically, though? Nick Bolton? I mean, he does pretty well against the run, but what about against rushing quarterbacks? That's something that needs to be accounted for. Drew Tranquil, this is a guy who's also been a very reliable linebacker since coming to Kansas City. Leo Chenal, I think, has surprised a lot of people. I said all offseason, I think the loss of Willie Gay, as big of a loss it is, a very underrated loss. I still think that Willie Gay is a good run stopper, but felt like all year long that Leo Chenal was going to do some good things this year, and he certainly has. Leo Chenal actually got a couple of votes for the All-Pro team. That was surprising to me. But I guess there were a couple of voters out there that felt like Chenal was so good that he deserved some recognition for the All-Pro team. So I think if you want to have Leo Chenal be tabbed as, and you can't do it every single play, obviously. Obviously, it depends on formations, the personnel that Buffalo is going to come out with, and the Kansas City defense going to have to match that. But I think Leo Chenal is going to be someone who gets tabbed with that responsibility. You know, it's another guy that I think that I think that needs to. I kind of just wonder, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, a guy who I think is going to be a very good player for Kansas City's defense and maybe even a secret weapon. What about Jaden Hicks? I mean, Jaden Hicks in the preseason, we saw him show off his hard-hitting ability, and he's been doing that in some games lately. He played a lot in those 3 games in 11 days. He got involved with a couple of interceptions, one against the Browns and another one against the Texans. And he played a lot in that week 18 game against the Broncos. He was one of the very, very few bright spots in that game. So I'm just looking at a guy like Jaden Hicks and kind of wonder, like, is that a guy that might play some of that hybrid linebacker or hybrid safety, I should say? Jaden Hicks, I think, is someone, because he's going to be faster than the linebackers. Not as big as, a guy like Leo Chenal and Nick Bolton, obviously, but with his speed and his hard-hitting ability, is that someone that maybe joins the linebackers with the responsibility of taking turns and keeping an eye on Josh Allen? That's what I want to know. Because here's the other thing, too, and you see this with a lot of quarterbacks. Mahomes does this very well. Lamar Jackson does it a lot. Josh Allen certainly capable of doing this, but you see it a lot where defenders are trying to go after quarterbacks, and quarterbacks do see them coming from a mile away, so they'll just do a nice little stutter step or a side step to throw off the defender, and then they'll be able to get a few more yards there. Man, if you're Kansas City, you can't be falling for those kinds of things. You got to go out there, wrap up, and try to bring them down, and if Josh Allen breaks that tackle, well, he's going to be slowed down a bit. And at that point, if you're Kansas City, you got to have a convoy there. It can't just be one guy. As soon as you see Allen go for it, man, there's got to be multiple guys right there to be ready. Because in case one guy misses, which is very common, it just happens with quarterbacks and how they're able to make defenders miss. You got to be ready to have some help there. So, for example, if Jaden Hicks goes out there, if he misses, well, at least he can create some sort of penetration to slow down Josh Allen. And at that point, if you have another linebacker there that's near the area, hopefully they can do enough to bring him down. Because at that point, he'll be his speed won't be as high in that moment. That's what I want to see. That to me is going to be the most important thing right there. I said this yesterday, and I will say it again right now. If Kansas City wants to go to the Super Bowl, it's going to be because they did a good job of stopping Josh Allen and not letting him run wild. That's going to be the most important part of Sunday's AFC Championship game. That game, the outcome of that game will depend on Josh Allen and his scrambling abilities. Because here's the big thing. If you're Kansas City, you got to find a way to prevent short yardage situations. And as much as I want to give all the faith and confidence to Kansas City's defense, let's be realistic here, guys. You guys know me. I'm always going to keep it 100 with you all. If the Bills are ever in a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1 situation, well, guess what? Every single person and their grandmother knows what's coming. I know it. You know it. Spags knows it. Chris Jones knows it. Every single person knows what's coming if you pay enough attention to the Bills and you watch a lot of their games. They're going to go for the QB sneak, the tush push, brotherly shove, whatever the hell it's called. And if they fail on that by some miracle, which I doubt happens because the success rate on that is pretty damn high, they'll go for it again on 4th down. Remember when it was a 3rd down play? This was, I believe, Buffalo's last play, with the exception of the quarterback kneels after the onside kick. Josh Allen on 3rd and goal, and I want to check and see where exactly they were. 3rd and goal from the Baltimore 2. Allen was in shotgun formation, snapped the football, waited just half a second to make it seem like he was going to pass, but then takes off straight up the middle against trying to get that nice push from his offensive line going behind them. But Baltimore's defense, credit to them, they were all over it, and I think a lot of them expected it. So what happened? They got stuffed at the 2-yard line, maybe the 1-yard line. I thought it was the 1, but here on the stat sheet it says the 2-yard line. And what did Sean McDermott do? let the time go out, called the timeout, and he sent Tyler Bass to go kick a chip shot field goal to make it an 8-point game. Makes sense, because if Baltimore, God forbid, went down the field and got a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, which they damn near almost did it, you can't lose it in that situation if you're Buffalo. And by the way, unpopular opinion, even if Mark Andrews caught that, how much time was left? 133, 140 something. I think Josh Allen would have done enough to get them into field goal range anyway, because they had 2 timeouts at that point. But like I said, topic for another time. We can explore that in an alternate universe. But I just look at that moment on 3rd and goal from the Baltimore 2, where Josh Allen scrambled and got stopped at the line of scrimmage, maybe gained half a yard. I'm telling you guys right now, on the road in Kansas City at Arrowhead, with an opportunity to go to the Super Bowl and also prevent a three-peat from happening, Sean McDermott's not kicking the field goal there. They are going for it. 100% they're going for it. Rather than making it an 8-point game, they're going to make it a 2-score game. So, I mean, if you're Kansas City, one very important thing to do in this football game is to prevent these short yardage situations. Much easier said than done. Much easier said than done. That's why those first and second down plays, they're going to be very important. Find a way to create 3rd and long situations. Because if you can do that, I think your odds of winning this football game go up a lot. It's going to be very important. And listen, maybe they don't have a QB spy as often. Maybe they blitz more often in this one. I don't know. The way I've kind of noticed it with Spags, and we saw this last week. Not last week, but 2 days ago. You get what I mean? Where the Chiefs, they got a majority of their sacks in the second half. Because what I've noticed from Spags this year and last year, the first half is always a feeling out process. And I've said this many times, Andy Reid and Spags, they're great at making adjustments. And I know Houston came out of the locker room and had a phenomenal drive to open up the second half. But what did Houston do after that? Absolutely nothing. Not a damn thing. The 2 points that was gifted to them was because Kansas City was being strategic in that moment. It wasn't anything on their end. So maybe Josh Allen has his way with the Chiefs defense in the first half. And it's not really an ideal way of going about it, but that's just the way Spags has kind of gone about things. And he'll make those halftime adjustments. And I would not be shocked if you see more QB spies or maybe even more blitzing. I mean, if you're not going to do a QB spy, then send the house. We know how much the Chiefs love to send a linebacker and a defensive back to go after quarterbacks. And you got to be very quick about that kind of thing, because it's almost like, and I'll give you a simpler example. It's kind of like basketball. And I'm using basketball because it's 5-on-5, much more simplistic rather than 11-on-11. But yeah, if you have a double team in basketball where 2 guys are trying to guard the same ball handler, well, if you're the ball handler, you just got to look for where that one open guy is, quickly get him the ball. And if you're quick enough, you can give your teammate a wide open shot there at that point. I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at here with this Chiefs team. You got to send that blitz, and you got to be very quick about it, because there are going to be a lot of one-on-ones here, and it just takes one stutter step or one move to throw off your defender that's defending you and get open. So Kansas City's got to be very quick about that kind of thing. And I think having Jalen Watson back is going to be very important for this game, because Jalen Watson did not play. As a matter of fact, the Chiefs, they had a lot of players who did not play the last time these two teams played in Week 11. Isaiah Pacheco was not playing in that game. Hollywood Brown was still on IR. Still, there was some uncertainty about when he would return. Charles Omenihu was still on IR. Jalen Watson still on IR. So there were a lot of guys who were unavailable for the Chiefs. And I know the Bills had some guys unavailable in that game as well. But the Chiefs, I mean, they're damn near at full strength now. The only two guys they don't have right now are Rashee Rice and McCole Hardman. McCole Hardman's 21-day practice window does end, I believe, on Wednesday. So either tomorrow or Wednesday. I don't have that in front of me which day it is, but it's this week. So Kansas City's going to have to make a decision within the next 24 to 48 hours what they want to do with McCole Hardman. And no disrespect to McCole Hardman. I know he's done a good job on some running plays this year for Kansas City on those reverses, so I think he'd be a valued asset in that category. But in general, I mean, I don't know at the end of the day how much he'd be necessary. I know he had a big run once before on Buffalo, and Kansas City tried to run it with him a couple of times on trick plays last year in the divisional round when these two teams played in Buffalo. So, like I said, a couple of big differences here. Kansas City is going to be getting a lot of guys back, and I know Buffalo will have some of their guys back as well. But one big difference, it's going to be in Kansas City this time. It is going to be in Kansas City this time rather than Buffalo. Yeah, sure, Buffalo had the tiebreaker, but there was no tiebreaker situation here. So Kansas City, they did enough to win, and that is why it's very important for this to be in Kansas City. That was why it was important to have home field advantage, because you knew there was a strong possibility that you would rematch either Buffalo or Baltimore, and you definitely will take your odds at home than on the road. And I think that's that's why the number one seed, getting it, locking it up with a week to spare in the season, that all really came through. Yeah, I mean, you saw Travis Kelce's best game of the season, 117 yards. The only 100-yard game he had was against Tampa Bay, that overtime game. That's the only other 100-yard game he's had this season. So Travis Kelce, and I know he, trying to be funny and all of that, because Travis is Travis like that, telling people he's feeling 22. I don't think he's really joking around. Really. I mean, didn't that look like a much younger Travis Kelce? I mean, I know that long 49-yard catch and run play he had. If that was Travis Kelce from like 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, I think he scores on that play. Listen, he's 35 years old. Come on, let's cut him a little bit of a break there. But this is a guy who played great, and that bye week in week 18 and in the wild card round, that absolutely helped. It also helped that the Chiefs played on a Wednesday in week 17. So it's almost like when you're coming off a Thursday night football game and you have all of that time before your next game. People call it a mini bye. So that all certainly helped. Absolutely helped Kansas City in that game there. By the way, I know I mentioned this yesterday, and I'll say it again because this is very important. This is going to be another big key for Kansas City's offense. The turnovers. Absolutely going to be very important in this game. Buffalo, they are plus 24 in the turnover differential this season. The next best is Pittsburgh at plus 16. And then right after that is Green Bay, Minnesota, and the Chargers all at plus 12. They have 32 takeaways on the season. That is third most. Tied for first most was Minnesota and Pittsburgh. And the Chiefs played Pittsburgh on Christmas, the same day they got the number one seed, and did not commit a turnover in that game. They just got done playing Houston. They played Houston twice within 30 days. And in both of those games, Kansas City did not commit a single turnover. When the Chiefs and Bills played in week 11, Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. One of them was on the second play of the game. Absolutely terrible throw. And he had a few of those earlier on in the season. And then when the Chiefs were down by 9 points, trying to just get something going with basically time against them, Mahomes threw an interception that he normally would not throw had it been a one-possession game at that point. Since then, since that interception inside 2 minutes against Buffalo, Patrick Mahomes has not thrown an interception. As a matter of fact, the Chiefs have not committed a single turnover since week 11. They have gone 8 straight games, including the 38-0 loss to Denver. No turnovers. So that is very important. When you look at Kansas City, a lot of people were making a big deal about the fact that the Chiefs had a lot of turnovers earlier on in the year, and yes, they did. Kansas City finished the season with 14 giveaways. That is the 4th fewest in the NFL. Buffalo, however, they have the fewest with 8. Kansas City has one of them. Josh Allen, and I think that was a 4th down play where Allen threw an interception to Shamari Connor. So that whole situation there, I think Kansas City has certainly learned from that game right there. Patrick Mahomes is playing better football, and I know DeAndre Hopkins, since he joined the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes has hardly been committing turnovers. The Chiefs, they're still not the dominant offense that this team once was with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, McCall earlier on in his career. No, but I think you're seeing the Chiefs play smarter football right now. And I know a lot of people want to make such a big deal about the fact that the Chiefs have not scored more than 30 points. And that I think there are 4 teams that have not scored more than 30 points. 3 of them have like 2, 3, or 4 wins, and the 4th one is Kansas City. At the end of the day, you don't have to score 30. Like, tell me where in the NFL rulebook it states that you have to score 31 or more to win. It helps your odds, sure. I mentioned this over the weekend. I saw this post from Nick Wright the day the Lions lost, the same day the Chiefs beat the Texans. That was by far the biggest surprise. I know a lot of people were noting the defense with Detroit and all of the issues that it had up to this point, but no one saw this coming still at the end of the day, where the Lions, they dropped the ball in this one. The Lions, by the way, they scored 31 or more points 11 times this season. The Chiefs never scored more than 30. Who's playing on Championship Sunday? Is it the team that scored 31 or more points 11 times? Because I heard it all from Detroit fans, and don't pretend like you guys don't follow or don't listen suddenly, because you guys were commenting all year long. Oh, well, unlike Kansas City, Detroit blows teams out. Yeah? How'd that work out in the playoffs? Even with the woes on defense, people still thought Detroit was going to come through. And listen, even though they had the issues, that game was not on Detroit's defense. Not on Detroit's defense. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were far from perfect. That was on Jared Goff and the amount of turnovers, all of those things that occurred in that game. That was on the Lions offense, 100%. So, I just hope that this Chiefs team, they have the same approach coming into this game. I mean, you only had one true loss this year, and that is the team you're facing. And yeah, let me just go back to the whole blowout thing. I've said this before too. The Chiefs, they beat 4 of the 5 teams in last year's postseason that finished in the top 5 in point differential. Obviously, the higher point differential you have, it's an indication that you blow out a lot of teams more times than not. So when you look at that fact, they beat the Dolphins. Remember when the Dolphins put up 60 or 70 on the Broncos, and everyone thought that the Dolphins would beat the Chiefs in Germany? That didn't age well, not at all. That didn't even work out. In fact, it was the complete opposite. When you look at the Ravens, I mean, they were destroying teams. The Bills also, the 49ers as well, and the Chiefs beat all of them in the playoffs last year. Yeah, Michael says if your team wins by 1 point or 30 points, winning is winning. Yeah, absolutely. That is that's very important. All Andy Reid cares about is getting that W, and it hasn't been pretty. It does come down to the wire, and that's just the way it's worked out. Susan asked a really good question. Do you think the Chiefs will keep Hunt next year? I hope so. I hope so too. There are certainly, listen, Kansas City, I'm telling you right now, there's going to be a lot of turnover this year, and I think the biggest priority right now would be Trey Smith. He's going to be very difficult to keep because he's expected to reset the guard market. I mean, they're making not Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, Harrison Butker, Chris Jones, all of these guys the highest paid player at their position. They gave Kelsey a pay raise. Mahomes is making a lot of money, obviously. It's very difficult to do. I mean, Trey Smith is bound to be the highest paid guard in NFL history. I mean, that's just, I'd be surprised if he wasn't. So the Chiefs have some things to figure out, and that includes restructuring or to try to do something with Jawan Taylor's deal. we'll see how they want to manage that. But hopefully we don't have to discuss that too soon. Hopefully we can wait a couple more weeks before we dive deep into that, Susan. But what I will say is, because you brought up Kareem Hunt, there's been a lot of talk lately, and we didn't really get into this yesterday too much. But I'll get into it more now. The whole thing about who should the Chiefs have as their feature back in Sunday's game against the Bills. Should it be Kareem Hunt or should it be Isaiah Pacheco? Let me say this. So here's the answer I gave the other day. I said, let Kareem Hunt start. And by the way, when I say start, I think a lot of people kind of blow the start thing a little out of proportion. Like, let's say the Chiefs' first play of the game, they line up with 5 wide receivers. So let's just say Worthy, Hollywood, Hopkins, Juju, and Justin Watson. Let's say those are your 5 wide receivers on the first offensive play of the game for the Chiefs. Well, statistically, Justin Watson gets a start. Juju gets a start. And Travis Kelce, statistically speaking, does not get a start because he's not on the field for the first offensive snap of the game. So I think that gets kind of blown out of proportion a little bit when we talk about who should start and who shouldn't. I'm going to say this now. I do think Isaiah Pacheco should start for you. And here's why. He's the younger guy. And I know he was recovering from an injury, so it's not like he was just chilling and, having a grand old time, but he was also, on the sidelines for a while. So let Isaiah Pacheco go in there. Let him kind of get a feel for the opposing defense, the Bills defense. And if he's playing well, okay, well, then you continue to go with Isaiah Pacheco. He's got the hot hand. Anytime you're in a short yardage situation, you definitely put in Kareem Hunt. He's been much better in that part of the game on offense. And if you're in a situation where it's third and more than 3, then I think that's when you put Samaje Perine in. That's just the way the Chiefs offense has operated with those 3 running backs. I do think Kareem Hunt is a guy that you put more on the field in the second half. And I went and rewatched that Chiefs-Texans game. Man, Kareem Hunt did some good things in that second half there. Obviously, the massive 4th down gamble there where they gave it to Kareem Hunt. And I just kind of feel like, has Kareem Hunt failed in any short yardage situation this year for the Chiefs? I'm struggling to recall a moment where Kareem Hunt has let the offense down in that situation. I don't think he has. Prior to Kareem Hunt returning to Kansas City, the Chiefs used Carson Steele in that category. And I do want to go back to McCole Hardman for a moment here, not to get too off topic, but I'm looking at Carson Steele. When was the last time Carson Steele touched the football? He's been on the field. Don't get me wrong. He's played some snaps, not many. In fact, let me take a look at the offensive snaps for Carson Steele. He played 3 offensive snaps against Houston in the playoffs. 4 special team snaps. He played 23 against Denver. Okay, I mean, how much stock can we put into that game? He had 8 rushes for 25 yards. He also caught 2 passes for 2 yards. But prior to that game, the Christmas game, he didn't even see the field on offense against the Steelers in week 16. In week 15 against the Texans, played 6 snaps on offense, didn't touch the ball, though. 3 snaps against Cleveland, didn't touch the ball, though. No targets, no rushes, nothing. Against the Chargers, played 6 offensive snaps, but nothing there. The reason I'm bringing this all up, I kind of wonder, is this someone who could get demoted for McCole Hardman? I mean, it sucks for someone to get cut this late in the season, but, listen, if you're the Chiefs, you got to do what you got to do. I don't think Carson Steele's a bad player or anything. I hope he's back next year. I hope they give him another opportunity. But I just don't know. Like, if you're not using him, and McCole Hardman does have that speed, Is that where Kansas City could make that move? Because a lot of people, I think the obvious answer feels like Nico Remigio because he's a wide receiver. But Nico Remigio, he's done some good. He's got to work on holding on to the football for sure. Had that issue last week, had that issue in the preseason. But if you're Nico Remigio, you like what you're seeing from him. You just got to hold on to the football if you're Remigio. I think Hardman is somebody that you can utilize his speed in certain ways, and I think the Chiefs want to try to do that. Andy Reid has a decision to make in a day or two on that, so we'll find out very, very soon what he does. But to go back to the running game, I think you let Pacheco play for a majority of the first half, and then let Kareem Hunt kind of take over in the second half. I think that is what you got to do. Okay, Yaha, I see you're asking for my score prediction. I'll have that later in the week. I'll have that on Thursday's podcast. Timothy is asking, will the Chiefs keep, I was going to say Creed Humphreys. That's not the correct name. DJ Humphreys, or move on? That's a good question. Kansas City has not gotten the left tackle spot right. They just haven't. Whether it was Orlando Brown, whether it was Donovan Smith, or Kingsley Suamataia, Wanye Morris, they just have not gotten that position right. They have missed on that quite a bit. Unfortunately, Joe Thuney has been your best left tackle since you cut Eric Fisher, and that's not ideal. I mean, it's nice that you have somebody, but that's why you went into the playoffs with Joe Thuney, because he's got the hot hand, as the reports came out from Jordan Schultz when he first got it. And it's just one of those situations where, listen, protecting Patrick Mahomes is important. And I know the Chiefs have had bad left tackle play the past couple of years and have won Super Bowls, but I don't want to put that to the test again. I just don't. Because even though the Chiefs were finding ways to win games, it was hard to watch Mahomes get beat to hell in the backfield because of the bad play from the left tackle, whether it was Suamataia or Morris. They got some things to figure out. Is there a possibility Thuney in the offseason he maybe changes his physical shape and converts to left tackle? I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. I'm not saying that's what it will be or should be. I think it's something you have to consider. I do. I do think Kansas City has a couple of guards they like. Mike Caliendo, and he didn't play well in this postseason game, but Caliendo is someone that I think is a candidate. Hunter Norzad, I thought he played very well. One of the, again, very few bright spots in that 38-0 game with the second and third stringers. Hunter Norzad played very well, I thought, actually. His snapping needed work, but his pass blocking was awesome, like really, really good. So again, I don't want to get too much into that right now. So you guys are making me talk about the offseason. Chiefs are not in the offseason yet. So we got time. Hopefully we have 3 more weeks before we discuss all of that. But I will say this. The offensive line's got to be on its A game, because Buffalo, what's going to be their goal? To go after Patrick Mahomes. And they know that Mahomes is dealing with that nagging ankle injury that he suffered against Cleveland. So listen, I remember when the Chiefs were getting ready to play the Patriots in week 1 of the 2008 season. That was when the Patriots were coming off a season where they almost pulled off the undefeated season. I remember the talk all week long, because Brady did not play in the preseason that year. He was dealing with some sort of a foot injury going into training camp and the preseason. And a lot of people wondered, well, what's going on here? And that was at a time where, the media and all of that stuff, things did not get around as easy compared to now. And I think a lot of people just looked at Kansas City and said, hey, look, and you don't want to do anything dirty, but he's obviously not 100%. So play harder. Unfortunately, not that anyone ever wanted it to happen this way, but Brady did suffer the torn ACL there. And the game went from Brody Croyle versus Tom Brady to Damon Heward versus Matt Castle. And that obviously has a lot of significance today, considering Matt Castle, that basically was the birth of Matt Castle to Kansas City. But we don't need to get into that right now. My whole point is Buffalo knows that Patrick Mahomes is dealing with a nagging injury. So in that situation right there, Buffalo is going to do anything and everything to try to get in Mahomes' face, just rattle him and try to win against him. I mean, if you're Buffalo, that has to be the number one key, is to pressure Patrick Mahomes. That's absolutely what this Buffalo team needs to do. All right, I'll read a few more questions or comments here and then get out of here. Douglas says Pacheco runs like he is mad at the ground. Here, fortunate to have both. Yes, Pacheco, numbers-wise, just not very good this year. In fact, this is worst year statistically. Certainly taking a step back, but he's all you have right now, so still rather go with him than not. Him and Kareem Hunt, just to be clear. Buffalo's strength is interior defense more, though, right? Yeah, I mean, they've got a good defensive front. Buffalo's defense has always been just stout and reliable. So I think if you're Kansas City, you gotta make sure you're ready to win at the line of scrimmage. That is going to be very important here, because if Kansas City can be ready and win the battle at the line of scrimmage, both on offense and defense, defensively speaking, I think they'll be ready for Josh Allen if he wants to take off and use his feet in this game. Timothy says, I'm just saying, why keep two left tackles we aren't using on the active roster? Well, I was going to mention this, but we didn't really get into it. But in that Broncos game, the Chiefs did use Kingsley Suamata, at left guard. Listen, let's just be upfront and honest here. The Chiefs were not going into. I know Travis Kelce said on the podcast, because after that Broncos game, they had to stay in Denver because of the snowstorm in Kansas City. And Travis Kelce mentioned that the mood wasn't really high because they lost 38-0. But realistically, come on, Andy Reid's not dumb. He just won his 300th game. You knew that was not, a serious game for Kansas City. If anything, that was a great opportunity for Kansas City to learn about some of their young guys and how they can contribute to the team, both short-term and long-term. And what did they do? They put Kingsley Suamata at left guard. Why did they do that? Why was Kingsley put at left guard? It's not because they want to replace anyone, at least right this moment. That's not the goal. But if Tooney has to play left tackle permanently for as long as he's a Chief, and if Trey Smith moves on, maybe Suamata, he didn't look bad at guard. And that's a good Broncos team, by the way, defensively speaking. So there were some things that Kansas City was testing out in that game. I don't know. Listen, I don't know what Kansas City's offensive line is going to look like. We know Creed Humphrey's your center. We know that guaranteed 100% going into training camp. But who's your left tackle going to be? Who's your left guard going to be? Who's your right guard going to be? Is Trey Smith coming back? Is Joe Tooney going to shift back to guard? Is it going to be Caliendo? Is Hunter Norzak going to be allowed to compete for that spot maybe? Is Jawan Taylor going to return at right tackle? There are a lot of questions on this offensive line right now. And that's not a good thing to have right now. So for right now, though, this exact moment, you have a solid offensive line, a very good offensive line. I think, Caliendo certainly will learn from that game. That might be the best, one of the best defensive fronts you'll face in the NFL. Buffalo has a good defense, but not as good as Houston or Denver. So Caliendo, I trust we'll have a better game this time around against Buffalo. Jawan Taylor is really your only weak link, and if Taylor is the worst player you have, I think having woes at right tackle are much more feasible than having a bad right tackle and a bad left tackle. So we'll see what the Chiefs want to do there. We'll see what they do. Hey, real quick note. I don't want to say it's confirmed, but we do have a special guest we have lined up for Wednesday night. Wednesday night, we will go live 8:30 Central Time. We'll talk more about this game, any news that comes out. That'll obviously be the first day of practice for Kansas City, so we'll be able to discuss that, talk about who's on the injury report, any news that comes out of practice, and also look at Buffalo and their situation that day as well. So that'll be 8:30 Central Time on Wednesday. And then Thursday, I don't know exactly what time, but I'll share it on Wednesday. Thursday night, we will do another episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast live, and that is going to be the breakdown. We will break down the game between the Chiefs and the Bills. I'll give you my score prediction that night. It'll likely be 7 p.m., but just be aware we're not penciled in fully yet. And then the Red Friday live chat. Again, I don't know exactly what time, but we will do the Red Friday live chat this Friday. And we'll be able to talk more about the Chiefs because the injury report will be finalized. We'll see any game designations that'll be put out there. Hopefully, it's going to be another good week for the Chiefs practice-wise because everyone practiced last week every single day. The only player that didn't practice in full was McCole Hardman. He was limited every day, and he was on IR. So that was a pretty good sign for Kansas City. You can tell they're getting healthier and healthier. Andy Reid did say nothing major coming out of the Houston game. So Kansas City expected to have all of its players practicing in full for the most part. So we'll see. We'll talk about that as the week goes on. My name is Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for joining me tonight for this episode of the Chiefs Zone Podcast Live. For those of you who haven't done so already, I'm going to comment with the link below. Please subscribe to the Chiefs Zone Podcast on YouTube. I know it's easier to listen to the podcast live on YouTube than it is on Facebook, but it's up to you guys how you want to take it in. I still would appreciate a subscription on the Chiefs Zone on YouTube. It's free, no charge at all. We're trying to get the numbers up on the YouTube channel. That's the one where it's still fairly new, and that's the one where we have the fewest followers on all of the socials. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let a friend know about it. Please make sure you're liking these live streams or all of the social media posts and sharing them because that really helps out as well. Once again, I'm Farzin Vasugian. Appreciate all of you joining me for this episode of the Chiefs Zone Podcast. I will talk to you all Wednesday night. Take care.